Hey, Sassy Stuff. I'm Emma, and I'm here with Molly and Blythe, and we're here to preview the SEC Championship with Texas and Georgia. Let's get to it.
I am so excited to see Texas face Georgia once again. This is going to be the rematch made in heaven, is what I'm calling it. What do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, I'm super excited. This is going to be a huge game. Georgia handed Texas its only loss of the season back in October. And since then, Texas has looked like the better team. Georgia has struggled and made a couple questionable performances over the last couple weeks. And, Texas will enter Atlanta as the higher ranked team in the playoff. And also to win this battle as well. Georgia is trying to avoid a third loss in 4 years in the SEC championship game. They are 1-2 in the last three seasons, with the two losses coming from Alabama.
Yeah, but Kirby definitely has an Alabama problem. We figured that out this year. It's not just Nick Saban. But I am excited for this rematch between Georgia and Texas. I want to see how both teams have grown throughout the year. As you just said, Blythe, Georgia hasn't been playing their best ball since that game, really, especially in that Georgia Tech game. I think for the first three quarters, they were a little questionable at best as they're going into the SEC title game. But as we saw in the fourth quarter, they're able to turn it on and really come back in these big moments. We also saw that earlier this year when they played Bama, when they came back from that huge deficit. But overall, for Texas coming into the SEC with this being their first year, they've had a remarkable season with only one conference loss. And they want to be the kings of the SEC, and I'm excited to see if they're able to do it.
Texas's defense showed its championship caliber on Saturday. They held the Aggies to 7 points in a game that they had to win to advance to Atlanta. They also limited A&M to 248 total yards, and the only points, came from that pick six in the third quarter. And, Georgia has been in these big types of games. Like as a program, they know how to win games like this, but it's really going to take, I think, a perfect performance for them. Beck's got to be on because there's going to be a lot of questions, like we've talked about all year long with Georgia. Just there's been so many questionable games that we've had, and honestly, throughout this whole season, we have had questions about them. They haven't really shown us just quite yet that they are the best. And right now, I think Texas is the better team on paper, on both sides of the ball, on the field, week after week. I mean, I think they've proven that, and I think it's going to take a lot for Georgia to be able to beat them twice.
Yeah, I think Georgia had a really good first 4 weeks. And I think in the beginning of the season, looking back, maybe their schedule just wasn't as difficult as other teams, but it looked like they were consistent in the first 4 weeks. And then, like you guys have said, they played Texas. They had a huge win. And then from there, it started to crumble. I mean, the games got more and more questionable. The lines got more and more inconsistent. I feel like even the coaching was just
Mhm.
not all there. Um, I'm looking forward to seeing this rematch because I think they caught Texas at their worst week possible. And I want to see them play Texas at their best week possible. And I want to see Texas prove, and not even just as a fan, but I want to see Texas prove why they deserve to be in the SEC, why they're even here. And I think for them to come in their first season and possibly win the SEC championship kind of gives a certain finger to a certain group of people that didn't want them there in the first place. So.
I think so too. I think this is their opportunity to capitalize with just that last punch to the gut, to really make that statement on why they're here, that they belong here, and they're here to stay, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, and what I loved about Texas is in their last 5 opponents, they've held them to 17 points or fewer, and I think if you're able to do that against Georgia, then that's gonna be a big step in the right direction to pulling out this win. My worry for Texas is that this is kind of a home game for Georgia. They know Mercedes-Benz really, really well. Both Alabama and, Georgia have really made their stamp at Mercedes-Benz, so they're not unfamiliar in this territory. They'll also probably have a lot of people there on their side rooting for them. So it could be not a great environment for Texas to go into, but as we saw last week, they were able to go into Kyle Field, which is one of the hardest places to play as a team coming in there, and they seemed calm. They seemed very poised. So I'm excited to see how they handle the environment there.
Yeah, likewise. I just want to also compare, we have two new teams in the SEC. We see what Oklahoma has done and we've seen what Texas has done. And it actually is so interesting to see. Obviously their schedules were drastically different. Oklahoma had a much more the caliber of their schedule was much more difficult.
Mhm.
However, I am enjoying, just as a Texas fan, seeing this team thrive versus this other team that just did not have a good year at all. Wishing the best for them next year. However, I think it is so refreshing to see all the haters that came out and said that Texas didn't belong in the SEC, and a lot of them thought that OU did. And so now we're kind of looking at it and kind of like Blythe just said, I just think this is Texas' chance to punch somebody in the gut and be like, you know what? We did it. We're here. We're owning this whole conference, and we're better than all of you. And I love it because their only loss has been to Georgia. So I want to see them make up for this, atone for what they've done in that last loss. And I think it's going to be probably the best SEC championship, in my opinion.
I'm really excited to see how Texas is able to or if they're able to dominate up front,
Yeah.
because the biggest problem for Texas in that Georgia game was they let their defense get to Quinn Ewers so many times. I don't remember how many times exactly he was sacked, but he was on the floor a lot. They had to put Manning in to really settle Quinn Ewers back into the game, and it still wasn't enough. So if that O line doesn't hold and they can keep getting to Ewers and potentially Manning if he's in the game, then I think it's going to be a long night for Texas. So that O line really has to hold against Georgia's defensive front.
And the worst thing that we can do right now too is risk Ewers getting injured. And
Mhm.
so, especially coming up on a playoff season, the national championship, this is going to be the craziest next 6 weeks of our lives. So I really, that is like the only inconsistency that Texas has had is their offensive line. Their defense seems to show up every week, and like they won the Texas A&M game. The offensive line, though, has to protect Quinn Ewers because this is not going to go well in the playoffs if he is not healthy and not around.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing everyone has to look at too, especially because there's so many more weeks added to college football now. It's really going to be what team can hang on the longest, like who is the healthiest, and in these big matchups like this, obviously there's more potential for injuries. People risk getting hurt, but a lot of pressure is also going to be on Carson Beck. Georgia's rush attack is so inefficient, and the Bulldogs rank toward the bottom in rushing yards per game. So, Texas can capitalize on that. I think they'll be just fine. But I'm definitely rocking with the Longhorns this weekend. I think we can all agree on that one, especially with Emma being a Bama girl. We don't mind. We don't mind seeing Georgia go down.
No. However, Georgia winning would probably help Bama a
Yeah,
little bit. I honestly don't think it matters. The CFP is going to put Bama in the playoffs at this point.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But what I'm worried about, like you were saying, Molly, is because Quinn Ewers is so susceptible to injuries. Both of these teams are presumably in the playoffs. Like,
yeah,
let's call it for what it is. I
yeah,
think even if Georgia loses, they're in the playoffs. They're a 3-loss team, but they made it to that SEC
yeah.
championship game. So you still have a long way to go to get to January 20th. So if Quinn Ewers does seriously get hurt in this game, then that could supersede any problem that they have in this game, so it might not be worth, putting him on the line if he even feels a little bit uneasy about his health. As we saw in the Texas A&M game, he did have that special ankle brace on, but if he starts feeling a little twinge there, I would put Manning in. Manning's healthy right now, so I would preserve yours as long as possible because this game, although it matters in the SEC, doesn't and it matters for, a bye week in the playoffs, it doesn't matter for getting to the national championship. You still have to win all those other games. I know you would get a bye week on one, but you have to win out to get it to that national championship game. And that is the ultimate goal for both of these teams. So I would protect yours at all costs, especially if he's feeling a little bit off.
Yeah, and they treat Ewers a little bit more like a traditional quarterback. When he's in, They obviously don't want him getting injured, so all he does is really throw the ball. He very little runs. When they put Manning in, I love Manning because he seems to be multifaceted. They have him run the ball on almost every play. I mean,
Yeah.
it's insane. And he's really good at it. So I would like to see Manning get a little bit of playing time. Maybe if yours needs to be settled a little, or if the offensive line is just not working the best. I think Manning is a great, great, great asset to this team, and especially to have not only do you have one of the best quarterbacks in the CFP right now, Quinn Ewers, but then you also have a backup that I think could easily be one of the best quarterbacks next season.
Yeah.
Um, so I
So
think
anyway, you're feeling pretty good. If your main
yeah,
man goes down, that's hard and that stinks for
yeah,
a second. But then you remember who's behind him.
you literally have a man.
We're good. We are good. And as a program, that is what you want. I mean, that is great recruiting. That is the ultimate setup for success for the next couple of years to come as well. So I think even him getting in that type of game will help him obviously going forward. I mean, having that experience, like it is all about reps, especially in those big moments, knowing how to game manage, knowing how to not make the moment so big when you're walking into a place like this that really will be a home game for this Georgia Bulldog team. I mean, this is in their backyard, like Emma was saying. I mean, they are used to playing here. So any type of experience a younger guy can get in this kind of moment will bring the ultimate success for the years to come for sure.
And the thing I love about Manning, and we don't even know if he's gonna play, but we can gush on him a little bit, is he has this incredible family history, and I think anytime
Yeah,
he does play, he doesn't feel from the outside looking in, it doesn't feel like he's trying to live up to the expectations of his family or what his family has done. It seems like he's trying to forge his own path and make a name for himself. And so I don't feel like the pressure does get to him in that way. We don't know. But every time he goes out there, he seems very poised and he seems ready to play. And but I also think that's how he was raised. He knows what these moments mean, and he has a good head on his shoulders. So if he does get playing time this week, if Quinn Ewers needs to come out for any reason, then I think he's well equipped to go out there and make the most of it.
he's probably getting some good advice from his family. I mean, imagine the conversations they're probably having if he will go into this game, just the kind of insight and just advice that he's probably getting going into this is probably, so great and awesome to have that family experience.
Well, and I think being raised in a family of like obviously football legends, he was probably put in situations not that he was under pressure, but also like his family was under pressure and he's watching crazy Super Bowls, crazy competitive games, rivalry games. I think he can see what that pressure looks from the outside and he sees how his family members will handle it. And I think that that was probably the best thing for him growing up as a kid
Yeah,
because now he's in those shoes and he can remember what it looks like from the outside and now he's feeling it. And I think it gives him a little bit more of a leg up as a quarterback to understand this is just pressure. We're just playing the game. It's all good.
yeah,
Um, and he handles being under pressure really well
yeah,
for a rookie. So I think Texas is well equipped for this game as long as everybody stays healthy. Um, Georgia, I think, is also well equipped for this game. And I think if they do show up and they act like week two Georgia,
yeah,
I think it's going to be a very, very serious game.
yeah,
Sorry. Georgia just needs to play for 4 quarters. That's all it is I want to see a full game from them. I feel like in the games they've dropped, Alabama and Ole Miss, they weren't playing for the full 4 quarters. They almost dropped the Georgia Tech game because they didn't play for 3 of the quarters, in my opinion. And that really comes down to how is Carson back on the day. But Texas's well-balanced attack definitely gives them the edge in this game. I think Texas really can do something to pull out a win here. I always say you never want to play a team twice. I think once they beat you once, you kind of have an edge going into the next one. So I will be favoring Texas in this game. And then that would give them a bye week. And I'm also looking at if Oregon does lose in their championship game, maybe Texas will be ranked number one
yeah.
in the CFP. So it's exciting to see where everyone ends up. Georgia losing this game would put them at 3 losses, but I don't see them dropping much farther than they are right now. We obviously are filming this before Tuesday, so we don't know how the committee is feeling about this Georgia team, but in the AP poll, they are ranked 5th. So I'm interested to see if they go to maybe like 7, 8, if they do drop this game. And then Texas, I think if they drop this game, they'll go about to 5 or 6. So again, both teams are in the playoffs, but it's always nice to get a bye week.
Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can also connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, where you can find all things SEC stuff. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time.